Welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast. I am Kristen Boyce, a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice, Pathways to Healing Counseling. Through conversations, education, strategies, and shared stories, we will be closing the chapter on all the thoughts, feelings, people, and circumstances that don't serve you anymore and open the door to possibilities and the real you. You won't want to miss an episode, so be sure to subscribe. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. How are you? How is your week going? I know it can be filled with ups and downs and so much happening in life, and it can be stressful with so many different reactions and triggers. And this episode is for you. I recommend grabbing a notebook and a pen or just listening to it. You can listen to it as many times as you want. I found it extremely helpful as we're talking about how your thoughts and your body and your emotions are all connected and the importance of working through those responses in your body and how to start identifying if you're in fight, flight, freeze, or appease, as she calls it, or you can call it fawn, and shut down, and really recognizing body cues and how to work through them. We kind of just jumped into the conversation pretty quickly. I was like, oh, I got to hit record because we're doing the pre-interview is, hi, how are you? Where do you live? Things like that. And then we just kind of started jumping into talking. So it was a great conversation. She had so much to share, and we could have talked for another hour or two. She lives in the UK and has the last 3 years kind of moved around. She was in Belgium with her family, used to live in California. And we were talking about that and the adventure side of her and moving around and traveling more. And so that was interesting to hear how she handles the stress of all that. So let me introduce you to my guest. Rebekkah LaDyne brings over 20 years of teaching experience and more than 15 years of client experience to her work. She shares mind-body wellness and somatic integration. Somatic is body work, integration tools that truly change lives. As a researcher, therapist, and author, she supports individual clients and groups with somatic regulation, neural repatterning, it's breaking your patterns, and traumatic healing online around the globe. In addition to her master's degree in mind-body medicine from Saybrook University, she has completed extensive training with Somatic Experiencing Institute, and she is a lifelong learner. She also does a lot with internal family systems, IFS. You'll hear us talk about that. And she wrote a book, and that's the reason I contacted her, is because I wanted to really break down what was in her book and make it more practical. And if you really like what she's saying, grab the book. It's the Mind, Body, Stress Reset. The Mind, Body, Stress Reset. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Rebekkah LaDyne. Hope it's as helpful to you as it was to me. Okay, tell me about your book.
Great. Yes. So I wrote this book after I had just finished my research study in grad school. And the findings were really surprising and they felt really important to me personally, because in my grad program, they always said research is me search. So I was like, okay, I know a thing or two about stress and anxiety. Let me design a study that centers on tools for stress and anxiety. So the findings were really positive. I wanted to share the information, and I was sharing it with the folks that were coming to me for support for somatic therapy. But then I thought, after I wrote this, I don't know how many, a few hundred pages, and I was thinking, okay, no one's ever going to read this. It's like me and my thesis chair are reading this. And so I decided to turn this very, very dry, very scientific paper into a light. It is a light book. It's easy to read. It's got humor. It's from the stressed me to the stressed reader saying, I've been there and I know something about what you're experiencing and I care about what you're experiencing. And here are some initial tools. I want to say it's an initial toolkit. It is not comprehensive. It is to get your system on like sure footing. And then from there, each person can decide, because there's a lot of information in the book about what's going on in my nervous system when I melt into an anxiety puddle. What's going on in my nervous system when I'm feeling trapped in depression? What is going on in my nervous system when I move into fight, flight, freeze, appease, right? We know the fourth one that didn't always get talked about before. We used to say fight, flight, freeze, shut down. So freeze and shut down are subtly different from one another. And that's important for folks that experience those to know about. We can talk about it if you'd like, but also that appease, where I can't gain safety unless I feel that you are pleased with me. I can't be all right unless I feel like my environment is allowing me to be all right. That's so rampant. So, and that is something that people really live in for long periods of time. And I think harder to detect than the fight, than the flight, than the freeze. Those are easier to detect, I think, for most folks. So yeah, I put pen to paper and I started to write about these tools of gaining your footing, getting a little stability in your nervous system, feeling a little, I would say, relationship between your nervous system and you. Some experience of it's not only my automatic responses happening from the body up to the heart, mind, but now I've got some tools to actually choose what do I put in to my body, heart, or mind, depending on what needs more support at any given point. And then I can play with the dials. I talk in the book about like the volume can be really, really loud on the anxious thoughts, really, really loud on the not safe sensations. And when you don't feel like you have any ability to affect those dials at all, you're just at the mercy of your stress reactivity, your anxiety, depression reactivity. It's crippling. I know it personally. I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but my clients, my friends, my family, pretty much have ever had a really honest conversation with has said, yeah, I know that feeling. So that's what this is about, getting to gain some access to those dials and getting to understand actually what is happening in me. That was the big central question that I went through when I was in the throes of extreme stress. And I do mean extreme anxiety, and underline that for me, extreme. And I just kept asking, what is happening to me and why? So I started with an inquiry into that. Should I keep going, Kristen?
Please, this is great. Yeah, let's keep going. You're doing fabulous.
So I started into the inquiry because I was a mindfulness teacher and I was a mindfulness practitioner. So I worked with clients to help them reduce their stress, anxiety, overwhelm by using mindfulness, which is great and helped many people, myself included, for years. And then my stress and anxiety got to a point where it was too strong for the tool of mindfulness, and the practice of non-judgmental awareness was no longer enough. And I experienced it myself that when non-judgmental awareness was being aware of, I feel very, very not safe enough. I feel very, very not okay with my experience. I feel very, very at the mercy of my stress brain, my amygdala firing, witnessing it however compassionately I was. It just was no longer bringing the regulation that it had before. And so in the book, I talk about when you're at a stress level, between 1 and 5, I think mindful awareness is great. I think we can meet our experience and we can change the way that it's impacting us through that compassionate witnessing, through that mental noting, even through somatic presence, letting it come, letting it visit the body, letting it pass through the body. When you start to get into 6 through 10 of the stress, anxiety, depression on a scale of 1 to 10, witnessing the body in an anxiety reaction at a level 7, level 8, level 9, it increases the anxiety reaction. It no longer regulates it to simply witness it. We need to come in with resource at that point. So Peter Levine, somatic experiencing founder, talks about activation and resource. And if they are working in, I'm moving my hands here for the listeners, not the viewers, but it's like if you've got those scales, one tipping to the one side, tipping to the other side, and there's somehow a relationship between activation and resource. Yeah, we get a little heavier on the activation at stressful times when we're having an argument with a loved one. We need to bring in resource on the other scale to come back to equilibrium. If it's short-lived, yeah, I had an argument. Yeah, it was difficult. Okay, now I got some resource coming in, some clarification between us, some connection between us, or we can't work it out today, but I'm going to go for a walk and take a little view of the landscape. I've got some resource there. Oh, I'm going to talk to my bestie. Okay, I've got some resource there. Then I can come back to that balanced enough experience in those scales. If I've got argument with a loved one, tips down, no resource comes in, then I get really difficult news from afar, tips down, resource, no, doesn't come in. Then I've got challenge with my child, tips down again. I've got all this weight on the scale of activation, and it's too much for the resource of compassionate presence to balance. It's too much for the resource of a walk in nature to balance, and so on and so on. Then I really need to start applying some more impactful resourcing tools to come back to that sure footing, that balanced enough state to take the steps of therapy, to take the steps of really looking at what am I putting on my plate? Is it too much? Is it workable? To take the steps of what am I carrying around with me on a daily basis? Can I keep carrying those emotional weights around, those calendaring weights around, those personal expectation weights around, all of those things? And so that's when we need to first get sure footing, then to make wise choices, or then to do the important healing that we both know is necessary to move forward with our lives. Did that answer the question?
That does. A couple of questions that popped up that I want to circle back to. The one that you had mentioned between the freeze response and shutdown. You said there's a difference, and I don't think many people know the difference. So could you really dive into the difference between the two?
Yes, great question. It's so important. So let's say in the middle zone, we have functional activation and functional resource. So that's me right now. I've got some functional activation. I'm thinking, I'm talking, I'm engaged. I've got functional resource. I'm taking you in. I'm recognizing you're listening to what I'm saying. I'm here in the middle zone, functional. Maybe even I hit optimal once in a while when you and I spark and we're like, yeah, we get this. We like this. We care about this, right? I can go too low into parasympathetic, where my activation begins to become less than what the moment needs from me or what the moment allows. Okay. And then I could go too high, which we'll talk about later, which is sympathetic, where I'm giving way more than the moment can take, or allows, again, is the word that comes to mind. So in the too low is where freeze and shutdown live. Below functional activation of, because there's the positive side of the parasympathetic, but we're going to talk about the difficult side. So in freeze, the environment won't allow me to have as much functioning as I do. It's not safe. I need to pull it in. I need to freeze it. I need to become a statue. I need to be silent. I need to be still. I need to be unrecognized. That's freeze. That's stillness. That's held in alertness, held in interaction, held in response, physical response, verbal response, emotional, mental response. So in that state, beneath the frozen exterior, the statue-like exterior, is a very high level of activation. The engine is revving. The mind is spinning in freeze, or at least active, depending on the person. The body has tension in it. There's a desire, an instinctive impulse to react, but a larger knowing, no, I can't right now. It's not fitting for this situation, or it's not safe in this situation. So, I mean, if you're on a crowded subway and the train stops suddenly and you think, oh my God, what is this? We're not even at a stop. You might have an impulse to run for the door, but your body says you can't run for the door. A, there's a whole bunch of people around you. B, the train isn't at a stop. C, the doors are closed. So then there's a healthy holding in. Okay, I want to run for the door, but I'm going to stay right here because the environment doesn't allow it. But what if, let's say, I'm in an intense meeting at work with some slightly aggressive supervisors, and they're suggesting or maybe mandating that I or my colleague take action that I know is not a good idea. But I know that if I speak out right now, I'm going to be the recipient of aggression. My colleague's going to be the recipient of aggression. I'm holding in my reactivity. I'm freezing myself. These are mundane examples. Okay. But this is just a little freeze taste. Like my body wants to say, hey, supervisor, this isn't going to work for XYZ reason. But I silence myself. I still myself. But my mind is like, it's not a good idea and we shouldn't. And I hope my colleague, and you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
In larger freeze reactions, it's like I see the car approaching the intersection ahead of me from oncoming lane, heading toward the next one in front of me. And I freeze. I could swerve, but I don't. I'm too startled with the complete overwhelm of the situation, and I'm not able to react and help myself. That's a difficult freeze response that happens involuntarily because my stress brain says these two predators, aka two cars, they're way bigger than me. I can't fight or flee. That evolutionary response. If I'm staying regulated enough and I'm staying embodied enough, maybe I can grab that steering wheel and veer to the side and avoid the collision. But we've all been in situations where there was that split second. I wish I did, but my body, its instinctive response stopped me. So freeze has a ton of activation underneath it. That's the important distinguishing characteristic. Shutdown, its cousin, we could say, but not the same, also is held in reactivity, also is silencing, stilling, but underneath it is actually the beginning of a numbing state, the beginning of dissociative state, the beginning of this threat is big enough that I need to not only not engage with it verbally, physically, emotionally, I also need to not engage with it psychologically. I need to check out. So I'm going to really disappear. I don't want to just go unnoticed. I actually want to be gone. And in that shutdown state, we disconnect from ourselves and others. I'm no longer ruminating in the background. I'm actually not tracking what's happening. Mm-hmm. That's the situation where someone says, I stepped out in front of a hostile person at a nightclub one night at 3 a.m. And someone's like, didn't you see them? And I was like, no, because my stress brain heard an altercation before I even got out the front door, and it got nervous because the crowd was pushing me out the door and it shut me down and I walked right into trouble. That's a shutdown state where I didn't know that I didn't know that I was walking into trouble. So shutdown it's self-protective. A child who's in a very overwhelming state. I mean, it's so sad, but they're lost at the zoo and they can't find their grownups and they've been away from them for a long time. Finally, they just, after the crying, first there's some fight. I need my mom or dad. Then there's some flight running around. Where are they? Where are they? Where are they? Then there's some freeze. Like I'm holding still and I'm holding on to my teddy bear and I'm glancing and trying to find them. And then finally there's just that stillness. I give up. I'm staring off into space. When are they coming? So that's kind of moving through the stages of it. You can see that.
It's really helpful for people that don't know about dissociation. I think because clients will come in and we're trying to help them start to recognize when do you go into the shutdown phase And it's a really hard thing to start teaching clients and
Very hard.
people. So how would you help someone start recognizing what state they're in and then how to move through it?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So this is where we come back to mindfulness. When we've got a guide like you, a guide like a somatic therapist with you to help you move through what your stress brain is saying is too much. When you've got a partner there, it could be a friend, it could be a therapist, it could be your mate. Then you start to notice, okay, today something really hard happened. I was in such and such a place and such a thing happened. And when you are telling the story to your best friend and you start to feel your body goes a little numb, your memory gets a little foggy in the present moment, in the time that you're telling your person, those are little clues. I think I went into a little bit of a shutdown while that was happening. Use the present moment experience of your recall as a guide, because as Bessel van der Kolk wrote, the body keeps the score, right? I talk about his work in my book. I say in the book, your body is always there beneath the surface, remembering what it has experienced. It's there. Your somatic imprints are telling you the story. And this is where we come back around to mindfulness to say, use it now when you've got your guide to pay attention. So when you're telling your friend of what happened, such and such happened today, and your heart starts to speed up, but you start to feel kind of tight and kind of still, and you become stiff almost, that's an indication of, maybe there's a little freeze taking place. Yeah. Okay. Wow. That's interesting. And then you can work with it with your skilled professional or with your friend who can be there to support you. I can just kind of flip up, and this could be a segue into the other side of the spectrum if you'd like. Okay.
Yes, that'd be helpful.
So then if I'm telling my person, yeah, such and such happened today, and then such and such took place, and start to speed up, and I'm really animated, there's a little bit of fight reactivity in me. And then I wanted to, and then she did, and then, right? That's like my aggression is rising in my body. Oof, there's some fight response that went along with that. Or I'm kind of almost antsy, can't sit still. As I'm talking about it, I'm like putting away all the dishes in the dishwasher and cleaning every counter in the kitchen. A little bit of flight, little bit of excessive movement going on, little bit of restlessness. These are just a few, as you can hear, I'm just mentioning a few traits of each of these states. But when you, each of you listeners, start to get to know, how does my body exemplify my version of freeze or shut down, my version of fight or flight? And there are some questionnaires in the book that help you kind of walk through it and think through, how does this show up in me? Because I talk about our stress signature. Each person's stress signature is different, just like our handwriting is all different. And we really need to get to know, what are my physiological, what are my body's expressions of my reactivity? And then once we start to know it and we start to know this is what's happening, this is in me, and there's no shame in it whatsoever. This is biology. This is how we're built. Then we can help ourselves. Yeah. So we use our mindful awareness to identify what's happening. And then I think we need to use these somatic tools to help ourselves bring some resilience to what is happening.
Keep going.
Should I go to the top?
Yeah, keep going to the top. Yep.
You could tell. You could tell. I was like, should I go there? Okay. So then above functional, like I said before, I've got healthy activation in my system right now. Thinking, I'm talking, I'm engaged. This is activation. There's nothing wrong with activation. But if I go above what we call the window of tolerance, which I describe and outline more in the book, first thing I'm going to hit is this fight reactivity. I'm kind of, as I paused for a second, because there is a ladder of regulation and dysregulation described by Stephen Porges, who I talk about in my book, who describes the sequence that the nervous system goes to. So freeze is first in the too low, then shut down. We say flight is the first thing in the too high, then the fight.
Mm.
So if we can get away from what is too much, that's our first instinct. I don't want to be here. This isn't working out for me. It's not working out for my friends and family. It's not working out for whomever. I need to go. If we can get away, we go. Our feet do the talking for us. If we can't get away and we're stuck, we start to fight. I don't want to be here. And so I have to be here. Therefore, what is happening here needs to stop happening. Yeah. What is taking place in this situation can no longer take place if I'm going to stay regulated. That's what our nervous system would be saying. Flight reactivity mobilizes tons of energy in the system to get us away from the thing that is not okay for us to be experiencing. Very often, it's not appropriate to get away. In the case of children, we're too little to get away. There's nowhere to get away to. And that's when we start getting into this instinct of self-protection, fight reactivity. I need to, in some way, keep myself from getting emotionally, physically, psychologically injured by what I cannot get myself away from. That's where we are. Okay, healthy boundary. No, you strange person on the street cannot come closer to me. That's the end of that. Healthy boundary with the family member. You, person I care about, can't bring this dialogue into my day, can't bring this conflict to this dinner table, can't, whatever it is. When that is possible and we can defend ourselves, our nervous system is happy. When we are unable to either flee, flight, fight, it's not appropriate, it's not safe, we're too small, we won't allow ourselves. There's a lot of cultural demonization of those things. Then I'm going to start to go into freeze. Okay, I'm going to pull myself in and silence myself. That's the next in the sequence. Okay, I know that I don't want to allow you near me or to allow this to happen, but I've got to become silent and still. If it's still too overwhelming, then I'm going to shut down. There's that little option between freeze and shutdown that I spoke of before, which is appease. And so this is the last survival strategy that we employ just automatically, unconsciously, really throughout stressful interactions. This isn't abnormal. This isn't exceptional. This is just how we are. Appease. Okay. I can't flee from you. I can't fight you. Freezing isn't working. You're still coming at me or insisting, or the environment requires me to be active inside of it. All right. I got to make you okay. I got to please you. I got to placate you. I got to dance around you. I got to get into a codependent relationship with you. I've got to do whatever it takes to make you happy enough to make myself safe. That is so common. And it's not as though we land in one of these and just park there. Our system moves us through them fluidly, quickly, all the time when we're in stressful events, when we're not just in them, but remembering them. Not just remembering them, but some little thing in the environment reminded us of them, triggered by them. Then which one am I in? And it's important to be able to recognize, oh gosh, my heart just started to pound and I'm sweating. That's a little bit of flight. Oop, quickly to fight. I'm starting to feel my jaw lock and my eyes narrow. Oh, now my hands are cold and my shoulders feel stiff, jaw locked, going into some freeze. Now I'm really hypervigilant about how you feel and what you're doing and what you say. Appease. Oh, now I'm starting to feel myself float away and not care. Shut down.
That was beautiful. That was the most helpful I've heard walking through fight, flight, freeze, appease, shut down. That was the most beautiful way I've heard someone articulate it, that you can go, oh, that makes sense what my body's doing. It's very challenging for people to understand like what each of those mean. Oh, my jaw's tight. My eyes are closing in. Oh, I'm in a fight response. It gives you signals to now start noticing. So the fact that you name some body sensations and put them in the categories, if you will, or where you are on the ladder, I think that's a huge, if you could take notes and write that down, get the book that for me is a huge takeaway for people that are trying to recognize, what's my body doing? Why do I feel so intense inside?
Good. Exactly.
So that was really helpful.
That's why I wrote it, Kristen. Is so
I love that way you put it.
Let me just read this tiny little excerpt. Throughout the book, there are these like 2-sentence, 1-sentence excerpts. So this is an idea of it. Because of everything we just discussed, because stress reactivity is a reality, I wrote this as a little kind of takeaway. A felt sense of ease, well-being, and safety. All of these are paramount on the road to recovery from extreme stress. It's important that you are often in the company of these traveling mercies. Ease, well-being, and safety. They're your friends, and we all need to visit them throughout the day. And when we are living lives with stress events from that 1 to 5 place, okay, good. That was a 1 to 5. 5. It's difficult. Okay, that's over now. Going to go back towards 2, back towards 1. I'm going to hang out with ease and well-being and safety. When I'm spending, and I do mean I'm spending my day 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, which I spent a couple years there. So this is from really hard-earned experience. I don't get low enough. I don't get to 2 or 3. I don't get to hang out with ease, well-being, and safety automatically. My body doesn't regulate itself. I have to go in and manually, or womanially, as I like to say, regulate my body, help my system come back from 7 to 4, even if it's just for a little while. And that's where Peter Levine talks about islands of safety. We're swimming in the ocean and we're being pummeled by waves and we're being pushed under every once in a while and choking on some salt water. And then we need an island of safety for a little while to catch our breath. And if ocean's not that tumultuous, we will drift to an island of safety probably on our own at some points throughout the day. But if the sea of our day is really rough, we have got to swim over to that island with everything we've got a couple times a day and take a few breaths. And then over time, our nervous system begins to recognize, oh yeah, I forgot about these islands of safety. I like these safe moments. I like these breaths that I can take. I want more of this. And then it returns to the familiarity of finding those islands of safety again. But it's very easy for the nervous system to forget that they exist altogether when we're spending most of our time in 7, 8, 9, 10 stress reaction.
If someone's like, I really love this, how do I turn the dial down to the intensity I feel in my nervous system?
Yeah.
Get back to regulation when I feel so dysregulated and almost like out of body, like I'm just out of control. How do people learn to turn the dial down?
Yeah. So we need to just kind of first, when you say that person who's like, I'm so dysregulated, I'm out of control. First thing is like, I put my hand on my heart. Some people put their hand on their belly. Some people just, take a breath and notice this is hard. This feels difficult. And my body, my stress brain is doing this for good reason. It believes this is the best way to help me. And if this were an immediate life-threatening emergency, this would be the best way to help me. But as Robert Sapolsky, who I talk about in the book, Stanford professor, talks about, the problem with us mammals is that we're not just alarmed by immediate threats. We're alarmed by psychological threats all day long. Anytime our brain happens to wander over to that thought, we can scare ourselves. And anytime a little, just momentary glimpse of something in the environment we're in reminds us of that psychological threat, the body goes off again. So just to kind of first say, thank you, body. I know you're doing your best for me. I appreciate you. And let's see what we can do to help, because the threat is not imminent. That's step 1. Then, truly, honestly, there are 4 easy tools in this book. I had to sit for a long time and ask myself, there's so many things I could write. What would be simplest and easiest for folks? So I just decided to write down the basic primer on how our nervous system functions, stress and anxiety effect, and then 4 simple tools to help basically give us agency over those dials. So the first tool that I talk about at length, these sound simple, but give yourself some time to familiarize with these practices, whether it's through my book or through other resources, wherever you get them. Breathing is so easy. We have it with us all the time. We do it throughout our life. When we stop doing it, it's no longer our life. So breathing, every time we breathe in, the body naturally goes up just a little bit into sympathetic, just a little quickening of the heart, a little increased aliveness and alertness. Every time we breathe out, the body naturally goes just a little bit into parasympathetic, a little slowing of the heart, a little kind of receding of our alertness, a little softening in the body. We can allow ourselves to reacquaint ourselves with full breaths in and full breaths out. And it sounds so simple, but it really has the potential to reset where your nervous system is functioning in that moment. So if you take 1 minute, 4 minutes, 8 minutes to breathe rhythmically, taking those smooth, easy, comfortable breaths in, don't count, don't strain, don't try. Make friends with your breath, be sweet to your body, and find inhales and exhales that work in connection to one another, because that relationship between a little bit of sympathetic, a little bit of get up and go, we can call it, and a little bit of rest and ease on the parasympathetic, building a bridge between those two is one of the ways that we learn to come back from stress reactivity. Peter Levine always says, trauma, stress, anxiety, those are facts of life, but they don't have to be a life sentence. So we're all going to experience them, just as the way it is. And it's okay that we do. There's nothing wrong. And we need to start saying out loud to each other, I do. Yeah, me too. I do. So do I. Everybody does. Your therapist does. Your somatic therapist does. Whoever you know that you think they don't, please hear me now. They do. Okay. Yes. It's biology. We need a bridge between that stress event and the resilience recovery from that stress. Breathing is one way. I want to talk about the fourth tool in the book for a little while, because it is so impactful. And I did this research, I guess 10 years ago. Yeah, I guess I conducted the research 11 years ago and started writing this 10 years ago. And I love somatic experiencing. I love somatic therapy. But since then, I've also trained in IFS, internal family systems. So beautiful, so complementary. And one of the things that both of these approaches do so well is work with imagery. And they're both so good for trauma and extreme stress and anxiety. And I give credit to that connection between imagery and the efficacy of those two models, because our stress brain and our somatic sensibility communicates in sensation and image. And so when we can work with sensation and image together, internal image, pictures in the mind, some people, when they say or think the word picture, they actually see a photograph in the mind or a drawing or painting in the mind. Some people, the word image is actually like verbal image or narrative image. It's words. And some people, image is actually sensation. It's kind of a sensory image that tells a story. So any of those fits when I use the word image. And then sensation, to differ from sensory image, sensory impression is what I want to say for image, but like sensory data is, how does my body feel right now when I visit the stressful memory or experience, when I'm in the stressful experience, when I visit an image that is the stress experience, what data does my body give me? And then the opposite of all of that. What happens in my body when I visit an image, whatever your image is, listeners, that is resourcing, an image that is bringing new possibility, because this is imagination, new possibility to the stress memory or the stress event in current day. In the book, I have a chapter that goes through step by step many different options for working with stress imagery or stress perception in the moment. Because as I was saying, your focus can narrow and you can get really vigilant for threatening data when you're in any of those modes, but certainly fight, flight. And you can be really unable to track what's actually happening in any of the modes, but certainly freeze, shut down. Working with what we see or think we see, saw or think we saw, is really potent. So this has a real possibility of tuning those dials. If I have a stressful memory, let's use the one of getting lost at the zoo. So let's say it's my kid that got lost at the zoo. Boy, was that stressful, right? My child didn't get lost at the zoo, but just the possibility of talking about my little one getting lost at the zoo, I can feel a little somatic response. Do you feel anything, Kristen?
Oh, yes, I can feel that.
Like, oh, my little one could be lost at the zoo. Oof, something happens in there. Our stress response readiness is really available to, potentially threatening situations. So let's say my child got lost at the zoo and I have an image of that that's imprinted in me and it's stuck with me. And whenever they're out of sight in a big environment now, I go into reactivity and my body runs away with me, so to speak. I need to take care of myself. This is like a little T trauma, right? Let's say in this example I'm giving at the zoo, when it really did happen, I found my child after 10, 15 minutes. They're okay. I'm okay. No harm came to anyone, but the somatic experience of the worry that I felt for them was strong enough, compelling enough that it imprinted in my system or spoke to a part in me, as we would say in IFS language. And that imprint or part is still kind of reminding me I'm still here and I'm still holding worry. And so then what could happen, really easy to have happen, is that when I'm in a large environment, I could be in the grocery store. I could be at a big water park with my child. I could be, where do we go? Football game. And they're out of eyesight. My body goes right into, where are they? Oh no, they must be lost. And I do say my body because my mind isn't the orchestrator of that. What happens is like the somatic image comes up when they're out of eyesight. And then a slideshow of possibilities starts to present itself in my brain. So those scary images then make my body feel more stressed. And then the more stress in my body brings up more scary images. And I'm on a loop right now where I'm increasing my fear and then increasing my image worry and then back down to my fear and back up to my image worry. What we have the ability to do then is get to that dial through image. So while I'm in the parking lot for the football game is not a good time to do this. There's too much going on. There's too much activation. My body's going to feel unsafe. I want to recognize, gosh, each time I've gone to the grocery store this year, football game this year, water park this year, I've been having this stress reaction. And I realize, I think it's from that day at the zoo. I'm going to take myself, maybe just me. Maybe I go with my bestie who also had an experience like this. Maybe I go with my partner who was there at the zoo with me that day. You get to decide. But I'm going to go to a safe, calm place. Maybe it's just before I go to sleep at night and I'm cozy under my comforter. Maybe it's while I drink tea in the morning and I'm looking out the window. Maybe it's while I'm waiting in the carpool line and I'm just sitting there and instead of looking at my phone, I'm going to do this. A few minutes where, okay, here we go. Let me allow my system to present one of the images that comes to me when I get into this stress reaction. And it's an image of my little one lost in the parking lot at the game. And I'm thinking, oh no, where are they? And I'm imagining a car going too quickly through the aisles and you know what happens next, right? So I have a stress image. already the first image is they're not there. The next image is they're walking alone through a parking lot. The next image is cars are driving through the parking lot. It's amplifying. I want to ask myself, okay, these are all activating additions to this image. What would help this imprint, or what would help this part feel safer, feel better, if it could be different, if it could feel like an outcome for my child that's not scary, or a reason that they're out of eyesight that isn't frightening? What would it look like? So I inquire with myself, and I give myself an invitation to change the image. I want to say that I made up the image of the parking lot. And so when I make up that image and that image scares me, I'm activating my system. Therefore, I have a right, I would say, it's my image. I have a right to make up one that is less scary for my system and resource my system, soothe my system. And people are like, but it's fake. Okay, but the scary image also was, we could say, fake. Okay, so let me play with it and rework it until I feel a little bit more okayness. I talk a lot about okayness in my book, a little bit more soothed, a little bit safer, a little more breath, a little slower heart rate. Yes, I'm going to play with an image that I made the whole thing of until it starts to feel less threatening. However, there's also a very important possibility to gift to my imprint, gift to my parts, my nervous system. That day at that zoo, that original small T trauma, I want to picture it going differently. It keeps popping into my head. It keeps running through my mind and frightening me. And I keep wishing, if only I had had my sister with me while I was looking for my little one. If only I had had maybe the employee at the zoo, bless them. Maybe they were really harsh and like impatient and running to 5 things. And I want to imagine that they were really patient with me and really understanding and really generous with me. So I might want to go back into an image of something that really did happen and add in resource to it. And people say, but then I'm telling myself something that's not true. Okay. You're never going to change your brain's historical memory. You're not lying to yourself. You're not like confusing yourself. What you're doing is letting your nervous system have a different response to the scary image that you keep replaying in your mind. Okay. So in a way, the image that you keep replaying in your mind also isn't the day itself. It's your image of it, your imprint of it. And if you feel like you can say, okay, brain, I know it didn't go this way, but I wish it had. I know it didn't happen like this, but it would have felt so good if it did. Those are little gifts you can give your nervous system. Those are really potent communications to your stress brain, to your somatic body. Oh, I can remember this from an embodied state of more okayness than I originally lived it. And then when I pull it up again next time, I can feel a little more okay about what I actually did live. I'm not going to forget, but I can feel differently about it after I've used imagery to work with it. Does that make sense?
It does. And unfortunately, we're out of time. It went so fast. This has been fantastic. I know, but flew by.
Good.
Where can people find the Mind Body Stress Reset? I love the word reset that you have that in the title. Where can they find it? Where can they find more about you? You have so much wisdom to share. They're probably grasping for, I want more.
The Mind Body Stress Reset is available wherever books are sold. So I like to plug IndieBound. It's an independent bookstore online list. You can find it near you. It's available on all the other online platforms. You can find me at RebekkahLaDyne.com. My name is spelled funny. So it's RebekkahLaDyne.com. And I've got a couple YouTube videos, not that many. And I've done a lot of podcasts, so you can listen to them. But of course, you've already heard this one, so that's great. And yeah, please do read the book. Please do see if those tools help you. They've helped so many people, which was the most important thing for me, just to get the information out there to folks. Yeah, it's been great to talk to you today. I'm so glad.
Thank you so much, Rebekkah. This has been fantastic. Thank you. We're so grateful for the work you're doing in the world. Go grab the book, everyone, and if you need to re-listen to this episode and take notes, I highly encourage you to do so. Thank you so much and be well. Thank you so much for listening to the Close the Chapter podcast. My hope is that you took home some actionable steps along with motivation, inspiration, and hope for making sustainable change in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, click the subscribe button to be sure to get the updated episodes every week and share with a friend or a family member. For more information about how to get connected, visit Kristen, Kristen, Boyce, Boice.com. Thanks and have a great day.